Coming up on this episode of Design to the Nines, this episode was shot under Hurricane Duress. But I still got 3 decorative pumpkin projects for you. If that sounds good to you, stay tuned. Welcome to Design to the Nines. I'm Natalie Callahan, and if this is the first time we're meeting, welcome to my channel. If you enjoy learning about DIY and home decor, then you are in the right place, and I'd ask you to consider subscribing to my channel below and turning the notifications on so you don't miss a thing, and I would love it if you joined me. Now, I've got 3 great decorative pumpkin projects for you today, but before we get started, I wanted to give a little shout out to what might be my youngest subscriber that I'm aware of anyways, Sophia. Hey Sophia, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support and I hope you keep watching. So let's get started. We are going to be making some pumpkin topiaries. So I picked up these foam pumpkins, and they are honestly one of the cheapest looking pumpkins I have ever seen. But the goal is to kind of give them a faux stone, faux cement with moss on them effect. When I first had this idea, I really wanted to do real cement pumpkins. Then I decided that I just wanted to do something a little bit simpler that has that same kind of look and feel. So the first thing that we're going to need to do for our pumpkins is get rid of all of these rough ridges. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand them down a little bit, and then there's like this little seam where they put the 2 pumpkin halves together. I'm sure they use some sort of mold and then put them together, and there's a seam. And I'm going to just take a little bit of this dry deck spackling and try to kind of fill in that seam a little bit, and then we'll let it dry and then come back and sand it a little bit. And then they will be prepared for our cement spray paint. It's RUST-OLEUM cement, and there is a technique of spraying styrofoam because you can melt the styrofoam if you don't do it right. I've set the pumpkins aside, and now we've got to do the kind of like the base for the topiary. And what I decided to use was some terracotta pots. Now, orange does go with Halloween, but I feel that if we are doing like an aged mossy cement pumpkin, that we can't just leave these alone. We kind of need to give them an aged patina as well. And we're going to age them with a little white chalk paint. And I have got to put on my gloves. Did you notice in the last segment, I did treat myself? It will probably be totally ruined by the end of this episode. Okay, so I'm going to just be taking some white chalk paint. This one's by Folk Art. Just kind of brush it on in like random spots. Then I've got just a little bit of water here and a paper towel. Just get it wet and then kind of do a whitewash. Take your wet paper towel and do the same thing on the inside. So now it's time to paint our pumpkins in this RUST-OLEUM cement paint. The secret here is lots of little light coats, and you don't want to get too close. You want to stay about 12 inches away. Then we will flip them over and do the tops. I picked up this dowel at Michael's. It was about $1 if I didn't even use a coupon. But now we're going to measure it in half. It's about 36 inches, so half is 18. Normally I would use my saw, but I know not everybody has a saw. And so I wanted to show you another option, especially something like a dowel. I picked up this little hacksaw at Dollar Tree. We're simply just going to use it to cut it right in half. Now we're going to pull out our trusty gel stain. It's like the bottomless stain. I've used this for a million projects. And I simply just got one of my husband's garage paper towels. You could use whatever you have on hand. And I'm just going to run a quick stain on this dowel. So our pumpkins are completely dry. We did the best we could, and it still did eat a little bit of the foam. This is not going to matter so much because we are going to be adding some paint. We are going to be adding some moss, so that's okay. As far as the cement spray paint, I think on the styrofoam, you would have been fine just using gray paint, honestly. You could probably try gray chalk paint and you probably would have had a better result. That's my honest feedback. We're going to pull out our white chalk paint, and we are going to add a little bit of dimension, a little bit of a chalky finish, kind of to, whoa. I left some chalk paint on my brush and put it in a Ziploc bag. I thought it would be okay. It was not. Live and learn. A Ziploc bag isn't fail-proof. We want this to go on actually pretty dry. I put some paint on and then I'm going to dab a lot of it off. Dab it into the ribs. And then a little bit on top here. So I'm just going to do this to the rest of the pumpkins. Then I'll meet you in the kitchen. I really just wanted to find an excuse to come in my newly backsplashed kitchen. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put the link above. We're going to take some of this moss that I picked up from the Dollar Tree and we're going to blend it. And I know that seems kind of odd, but I didn't want chunky moss. I don't think we're going to need that much, so just a little bit. I want to assemble our topiaries. First, we've already added our foam, and then we're going to add our dowel right to the center. So that's in there sturdy. I don't want to push this through, so what I'm going to do is I've got my drill. It's pretty easy to do. We're going to put on our first one facing it the direction we want. If you want to reinforce, you can use a little E6000 or hot glue or a kind of a combination of both. We're going to take some of our matte Mod Podge and just kind of brush a little on the top as well as going down the rib of the pumpkin a little bit. We're going to take our moss smoothie and grab a little pinch of it and just sprinkle it and kind of tap it down. If you want to see another Pottery Barn dupe, you're going to want to stick with me to the very end. That's my last project. So our second project is I found these kind of paper mache pumpkins at Joann's and I thought that they were so cute. And I decided that I wanted to decoupage them and cover them with some fun fabric. Now I selected these two fun fabrics. The first one's kind of a black and white polka dot and the second one's kind of like a smaller buffalo check. And I did this because I'm actually going to put these on my front porch. I know that sounds crazy because they're paper mache, but I think that once we cover them in fabric, and then I also have this waterproofing spray that I'm going to put on them, and they're not going to be in direct water. It's a covered porch and I'm going to kind of put them in the back area. You don't just have to use fabric. There's lots of options when decoupaging. Obviously, you could use tissue paper, you could use napkins, you could use this buffalo check orange scarf. Both of these I found at like the Dollar Tree. So those are some options as well. But I really liked these fabrics and I kind of had a vision in my mind for what that would look like. So you'll find that my style's a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. There's a little Osmond plug for you. So we have kind of like the gingham and the polka dot, which is a little bit more country, but we're going to make it a little bit rock and roll because I'm going to paint the stem and the leaves in kind of bold colors. The stem's actually going to be black. And then we are going to paint the leaves in like a Kelly green. We're going to start by doing the leaves first so we can get paint all over. If we get some on the pumpkin itself, it won't matter because we're going to be decoupaging. The best way to do glitter is mixing it in with the Mod Podge. And I went with the gloss because then it will have like a shine. I didn't want to matte down the glitter because that would kind of defeat the purpose. We're just going to very carefully put some of this glitter Mod Podge on the pumpkin. Now our glittery leaves have dried. I'm so excited because they turned out fantastic. Mixing it in with a Mod Podge makes it so it doesn't flake off and make a huge mess. So anytime I now glitter anything, this is going to be my new technique because otherwise it makes a huge mess, and this way it really contains the glitter. You still get the sparkle. It's time to start Mod Podging, and what we need to do is cut strips of fabric. So the first thing we're going to do is find our wider ribs of the pumpkin, and you want to measure at your widest spot, and then we're going to measure from the base of the stem. You always want to take your measurements at the widest point of the pumpkin. We're going to touch the stem and we're going to measure. We've got our pieces cut out and now we're ready to decoupage them on. I'm going to be using matte Mod Podge. I want the gloss versus the matte, so I am going to use the matte decoupage on the pumpkins. You want to brush a decent amount of decoupage on the back of the fabric, making sure it's pretty saturated. We are going to take our fabric. We want the fabric to just meet the stem. As you go, you want to just try to work out any wrinkles. I'm going to take some decoupage and put this on the top. Use the decoupage and your brush to kind of work it into those crevices, working out some of those wrinkles. I'm just going to take some blue painter's tape. I don't know, I didn't do this to begin with. And just kind of tape these two leaves up and out of the way. So you know I love to do Pottery Barn dupes, all designer dupes. I've done a few others as well. If you're interested in those, I'll put the playlist above. But I've got another good one for you today, and it is a Pottery Barn kind of twiggy pumpkin cloche, and it has like fairy lights on it, and I just thought it was so cute, and it came with a price tag of about $60. So we're going to try to recreate the same look for less. I got this grapevine off of Amazon, and I believe it was about $7 for 15 feet. And I had been trying to go into my local craft store and I couldn't find one, so I went to Amazon, and actually it ended up being cheaper. We are going to try to build the pumpkin out of this grapevine wreath, and hopefully we'll get a pretty close match. To create the base, I create something similar to a nest, leaving a space big enough for my candle to fit in, and securing it all together with strategically placed wires. Okay, so now we have the base for our twiggy pumpkin, and you can see that the candle fits down in there just fine. And now we need to build the top part of the pumpkin, and we are going to cut it off in sections. To form the pumpkin ribs, I cut 9-inch sections and make sure each end is secured with a wire. I then wire each rib tightly to the base, working in cross sections. To finish it off, I start out by hot gluing the top of each rib to the stem just to add a little support, while I then weave the wire in and out, creating kind of a web effect, and finish it out by wrapping it around the base of the stem. We need to add the finishing touch, and On For You sent me, it was actually pretty fortuitous because I actually needed the fairy lights for this project, and they sent me a pack of these fairy lights, and they're really cute. I'll put the link below, and all we need to do is just twist them into place. Well, my pumpkin projects are done, and overall I am happy with the results. I was a little rushed, and so they're not as perfect as I would like them to be, but I am facing threat of hurricane. A couple of things that I did learn. If I were to do these faux cement ones again, I would probably go ahead and splurge and spend more money on a nicer pumpkin, because I think that we would get a much better result. But for less than $5 for each one, it's a good result, but not a great one. And I also think if we were to use these same pumpkins, if we went ahead and used chalk paint, we would also get a more smooth, better result. But they're cute, and I do like them. And then we have our decoupaged fabric pumpkins that are just, they are so cute. They might be my favorite. I don't know. You'll have to let me know which one is your favorite. You will probably be seeing those make an appearance on my fall front porch coming up here soon. And then what do you think of my Pottery Barn dupe? I think that that's a pretty decent look. I felt a little rushed, so I think if I would have had a little bit more time, I could have gotten it a little bit better. But overall, I am happy. And you know what? I'm gonna let myself off the hook. There is a hurricane headed towards my house. I do want to let you know how much we appreciate your support. We do feel safe and secure where we're at. We're taking adequate preparations, and I'm gonna do the best I can to update my community page. So if you want to keep up to date with that, you're gonna want to subscribe to my channel below. If you liked this episode, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. Now I gotta go get busy getting my house ready for a hurricane. See ya.